This is not just a story about expensive cars. This is a lesson for everyone who has ever judged by appearances. If you want to see true justice served, watch to the end. Otherwise, you will miss the moment that changes everything. Post in the comments where are you watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the latest stories. In the small American town of Westbridge, a close-knit community where everybody knew everybody and dreams were nurtured despite humble means, two teenage boys, Jason and Miles, lived for the thrill of possibility. Every afternoon after school they gathered in Jason's attic, a cozy sanctuary filled with car magazines, handwritten sketches, and the gentle hum of ambition. Jason's love for automotive design was as vivid as the bold lines he etched on scrap paper, while Miles had an encyclopedic knowledge of engine profiles and performance statistics. Both were naturally curious, respectful, and kind, traits that set them apart from the cynical world of social status and pretense. Their modest attire, a simple, faded graphic t-shirt paired with worn denim shorts and scuffed sneakers, spoke of a grounded lifestyle where value was measured not by labels but by genuine passion. Often, while thumbing through glossy magazine spreads that showcased the seductive curves of Bentley and Royce models, they imagined themselves taking a closer look at the cars up close. One day, I'm going to ask questions about the technology behind these beauties, Miles, Jason would say, his eyes bright with dreams, as he traced the contours of a photo featuring a sleek, modern masterpiece of engineering. Miles always replied with an enthusiastic nod, adding, "Yeah, let's prove that knowledge and passion matter more than designer clothes or expensive gear. Our dreams belong to us, no matter where we come from." Their hearts were pure in intent. They wanted nothing more than to learn, to understand the artistry and mechanics behind luxury automobiles, and maybe, just maybe, to spark a conversation that transcended social classes. That fateful Saturday, with summer confidence in their stride and hearts pounding in anticipation of a new adventure, Jason and Miles decided to step out of their comfort zone. They'd read online about the legendary Bentley Royce auto showroom that had recently opened in Westbridge, a gleaming monument to opulence that gleamed like a jewel in an otherwise modest town. The idea ignited a bold hope. If they could get inside, even for a moment, they might ask a few questions about the engineering marvels they had idolized for so long. Under a bright sky, the two friends set out on foot. The walk to the dealership was filled with chatter about horsepower, torque, and the amazing technology housed behind the tinted glass windows of the showroom. They passed familiar storefronts, a local diner with neon signs, a row of mom-and-pop shops, and with every step, their determination grew. Their minds raced with possibilities and, if only for a few precious minutes, they imagined being in a world where every question mattered. When they finally reached Bentley Royce, the experience was nothing like what they had dreamed. The sleek, modern building was a shrine to luxury, with polished glass doors and an interior that sparkled with intricately arranged vehicles. Yet, as they pushed through the entrance, the boys knew their appearance would set them apart. The enormous marble foyer, decorated with glittering chandeliers and staffed by impeccably dressed salespeople, was a universe away from their own modest reality. They stepped up to the reception desk, hearts fluttering with equal parts trepidation and excitement. The receptionist, a sharply dressed individual with a too-perfect smile, barely spared them a glance. Soon, a man in an elegant suit, whose name tag read Carter, approached. His eyes, cold and assessing, instantly sized the boys up. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone more interrogative than welcoming. Jason mustered the courage to speak first. "Hello, sir. We were wondering. We saw some cars in your magazine and wanted to ask a few questions about the design and technology. We love cars and we'd like to know more." His words came out in a gentle, earnest murmur, his gaze steady as he spoke. Carter's lips curled into a disdainful smile as he looked them over. "I'm sorry, boys," he drawled smoothly, his voice dripping with condescension. "But this is a dealership for refined clientele. This is not a place for amateurs. Perhaps you should go back to where you belong." With a pointed gesture toward the heavy glass doors, he added loudly for all to hear, "This place is clearly not for you." In that moment, time seemed to slow. The surrounding chatter died down as a few well-dressed customers snickered quietly at the obvious display of superiority. Jason and Miles exchanged looks. Jason's eyes, wide with humiliation, shimmered with an unspoken determination. Though their hearts pounded with hurt, their faces hardened into resolve. They had come in search of knowledge, not confrontation. Yet the sting of rejection cut deep. Without another word, the two boys silently turned and walked out of the showroom, their heads held low as the sound of disparaging laughter echoed behind them. Outside, the cool breeze mingled with their quiet footsteps along the sidewalk. Each step away from the luxury dealership was heavy with the weight of rejection, but it also fueled a spark of defiance. Miles's mind raced with questions. Why would anyone, especially someone in a position of power, belittle curiosity and passion? And in the echo of Carter's words, Jason found not weakness but a strength emerging. A resolve to prove that a person's worth is not measured by appearances or a designer label, but by the quality of their character and the depth of their dreams. As they reached the edge of the parking lot and turned onto a quieter street, both boys paused. The moment was transformative, a reminder that while society might scorn them for their looks, their aspirations were something they alone could define. Deep in their souls, they vowed that one day they would return, stronger, prepared, and armed with success and expertise. Their silent promise was etched in Jason's determined eyes and Miles's unwavering gaze. A promise that spoke to the core of their beings, whispering that this encounter was not the end of their story, but rather the spark that would ignite a future defined by respect earned on merit alone. That night, as they sat together under the soft glow of a desk lamp in Jason's attic, their conversation ebbed and flowed between disappointment and ambition. They planned to research even deeper into the technology behind Bentley's and Royce's masterpieces, and dreamt of one day being influential voices in the automotive world. Though their hearts now bore the sting of an unkind encounter, they also brimmed with the determination to rise above it. For in that moment of self-doubt, a new awareness was sparked, that the most enduring form of wealth was not found in expensive clothes or lavish facades, but in the unyielding fire of passion and the strength to stand tall in the face of scorn. The polished doors of Bentley Royce swung open to reveal an interior that was as opulent as it was intimidating. Every surface shone with immaculate care, a sparkling display of high-end cars lined in a meticulously arranged parade of gleaming metallic perfection. Marble floors reflected the soft, warm glow of strategically placed chandeliers, and the air carried a subtle, expensive perfume that seemed to whisper exclusivity. It was an environment carefully crafted to speak only in the language of wealth, sophistication, and refinement. A language that Jason and Miles, dressed simply in their faded t-shirts and worn denim shorts, could not possibly master. As the boys stepped inside, their small frames felt instantly diminished by the cavernous space, where every detail screamed luxury. Jason's eyes widened at the sight of an intricately sculpted Bentley parked under a spotlight, its sleek curves and unmistakable emblem proclaiming the power of high engineering and heritage. Miles, ever the meticulous observer, shivered with admiration as he absorbed every refined detail, from the precision stitching on the leather seats to the whisper-quiet purr of the finely tuned engine displayed behind glass. For both, this was a dream come alive. Every page of the magazines they'd pored over was now in vivid reality. Yet, what they had imagined as a celebration of innovation and design very swiftly soured into a chapter of scorn. Almost immediately upon their entrance, their presence caught the attention of the showroom staff. Carter, a sharply groomed manager with a bespoke suit and an air of unassailable superiority, strode forward. His gaze, cold and dismissive, swept over the boys like a scalpel dissecting an unwelcome intrusion. With a practiced, condescending smile that did nothing to mask his contempt, he addressed them. "Gentlemen," he began with a clipped tone, "welcome to Bentley Royce, where only our esteemed clientele finds solace. However, I'm afraid this isn't a place for novices." He gestured grandly toward the arched glass doors behind him, his voice rising slightly to ensure that both the boys and the nearby well-heeled clientele could hear. This luxury showroom is reserved for those who appreciate the finer things in life, who understand the value of impeccable taste and refinement. Clearly, this is not the environment for you. His words, dripping with derision, were followed by a few stifled chuckles from other well-dressed employees and even some patrons standing casually by. The sound of their laughter mingled cruelly with the echo of his dismissive tone, amplifying the humiliation. Jason felt his face heat up as Carter's words reverberated in his ears. He had come to ask a few earnest questions about automotive design and the engineering marvels behind these exquisite machines. Questions born purely of admiration and curiosity. Instead, he found himself the subject of outright mockery. Miles, his usually animated companion, kept his eyes fixed on the polished floor, tears threatening to betray his inner hurt despite his quiet determination to remain composed. After Carter's parting remark, a final, "Kurt, this is not for you. Please leave now," the showroom's grandeur seemed to close in around them. The boys stood rooted to the spot, feeling every bit as out of place as their simple clothes in that temple of luxury. In the background, salespeople exchanged smirks and patients dismissed their questions with snide remarks. One young sales associate, barely concealing his amusement, leaned over to a colleague and whispered, "They should go back home and stick to their little toys." The comment, though muttered quietly, was loud enough for both Jason and Miles to hear, reaffirming their sense of isolation. The atmosphere, once brimming with the promise of enlightenment and shared passion, now felt cold and unwelcoming. An elite world where questions were met with scoffs and curiosity was ridiculed. Standing in the midst of sparkling show cars and polished chrome, the boys realized that their dreams of engaging with the true art and science of automobiles were being thwarted by disdain born from elitism. The showroom was not a place where the lines between admiration and condescension blurred. Here, every polished detail and every candlelit corner served to emphasize the divide between wealth and the yearning of the common heart. With no words left to challenge the dismissal, no one seemed willing to entertain genuine inquiry. Jason and Miles turned away slowly, their footsteps quiet as they exited the showroom. As they reached the heavy glass door, a last glance revealed the sneering faces of the sales staff, their laughter echoing behind them like a cruel refrain. In that brief moment, the camera of memory lingered on their expressions. Jason's eyes, momentarily brimming with unshed tears, then hardening into a look of determined defiance. Miles's downcast expression, secure in the bond of shared disappointment. Their dismissal was not just a rejection. It was an affront to their dreams. Outside, the noise of the city's routine hustle instantly swallowed the memory of their unkind reception. Yet the boys' inner world had irrevocably changed. Every step away from Bentley Royce was laden with both the sting of humiliation and the spark of determination. While whispered jeers and mocking smiles were now fixed in their memories, they also harbored a promise. A silent vow to one day prove that true worth is measured not by the price tag on a car or the fabric of a suit, but by passion, resilience, and the power of character. In the fading light of the afternoon, as they walked home under the vast blue sky, Jason and Miles exchanged few words. Instead, their silence spoke volumes. Their shared heartbreak was interwoven with a burgeoning resolve. The knowledge they gleaned from glossy photographs and overheard conversations would someday serve as the foundation upon which they built their future. They began to envision a life where their genuine thirst for knowledge and innate love of automobiles could one day carry them into realms where they were judged by the depth of their mind rather than the clothing on their backs. That silent promise, barely whispered in the corridors of their hearts, would one day set the course for a glorious return. One where the world of luxury would be forced to acknowledge that inclusivity, respect, and passion know no price. The boys trudged back home in the quiet twilight of Westbridge, their steps heavy with disappointment and hurt. The blazing neon lights of the downtown streets had long faded into the soft glow of street lamps, and the familiar, modest houses exuded warmth and safety, a stark contrast to the cold opulence they'd experienced that afternoon. Jason and Miles walked in silence, their minds replaying the cruel dismissal and derision from Bentley Royce over and over. Each echo of Carter's disdainful voice and each mocking laugh from the showroom staff stung like a fresh wound. Yet, Even in their quiet despair, there was an undercurrent of resolve. The humiliation they had suffered had planted in them a seed of determination, promising that one day they would return stronger and transform that bitter memory into a stepping stone toward success. At the modest brick house on Maple Street, the warm light of a single lamp spilled onto the front porch, welcoming the boys home. The gentle hum of distant conversations from inside and the comforting aroma of a home-cooked meal embraced them as they stepped through the familiar door. In the living room, worn but lovingly cared-for furniture and family photographs on the walls created an atmosphere infused with love and history, a stark contrast to the flamboyant and superficial world of Bentley Royce. Jason and Miles dropped their backpacks near the door and sank into their favorite armchairs, their eyes downcast and their expressions uncharacteristically solemn. After a few moments of heavy silence, as if the home itself was urging them to share their burden, Jason finally broke the quiet. His voice trembled slightly with a mixture of frustration and sorrow as he recalled the events of the day. "Dad, today we went to that Bentley Royce dealership," he began, his eyes fixed on a spot on the wooden floor, "just to ask a few questions about the cars. We've seen them in magazines and talked about them for so long. But when we got there, they treated us like we didn't belong. Carter, the manager, told us in front of everyone, 'This place is not for you.' The others laughed. They made us feel like our questions didn't matter at all." Miles, who had always been the quieter of the two but whose heart had been equally wounded by the encounter, nodded in agreement. "We just wanted to learn, Dad. But all we got was humiliation," he added softly, his voice thick with unshed tears. "It wasn't just about the cars, it was about us, about who we are. It felt like every part of us was being rejected because of what we wear and where we come from." The heavy silence that followed was as profound as it was painful. Their father, Mark Brooks, had been reading in his study, a room filled with modest decor and shelves lined with books and framed newspaper clippings, and was drawn by the tone of his sons' voices to join them in the living room. For a long moment, Mark listened quietly, his face a blend of empathy and restrained intensity. His eyes, usually calm and unflappable, now shone with a mix of sorrow and unspoken determination. "Boys," Mark said, his voice gentle yet carrying an authority that commanded attention, "I'm deeply sorry you had to encounter that kind of cruelty today. No one should ever be made to feel small for simply seeking to learn or to dream big." His gaze moved from one son to the other, taking in every line of youthful disappointment. Then, in a tone that betrayed both regret for the injustice and quiet resolve to set things right, he continued, "Your worth is not defined by the clothes you wear or the background you come from. It's defined by the passion in your hearts and the strength of your character, and that, my dear boys, is something no one has the right to belittle." There was a pause as Mark's words sank in. The gentle confidence that his sons had always known, even in moments of challenge, now seemed to burn even brighter. "I have something to share with you," Mark said, his tone softening further as he sat down on the worn sofa beside them. "I know you've always seen me as simply your dad, a man who works hard and cares for you deeply. But there's more to me than that. I've built my career on transformations, taking ideas, ensuring they have a future, and reshaping industries that once thought they were untouchable. I've come to understand that respect is not given by birth or wealth, but earned through actions, integrity, and the willingness to treat every person with dignity." Jason looked up, his eyes wide with curiosity and a flicker of hope mingled with his lingering hurt. "What do you mean, Dad?" he asked softly. Mark leaned forward and placed a hand on his son's shoulders. "There's a time when you must stand up for what's right. Today, when you were humiliated by that dealership, it wasn't just an attack on your dreams. It was a reflection of an attitude, a narrow mindset that believes only if you look the part you are worthy. I cannot let that go unanswered." His gaze was fixed, purposeful, and his words carried the weight of both regret and determination. "I've made decisions in my life that allowed me to build a global venture, a world of investments, media, and technology. And one thing I've learned is that true power lies in uplifting others, not in tearing them down." The room seemed to vibrate with the sudden intensity of Mark's conviction. "I promise you," he declared, that I will not allow people like Carter and the rest of that management team to define who you are. Tomorrow, we're going to return to that dealership, not as victims, but as a force that demands respect. His eyes flashed with a quiet fury and a visionary light. I'm going to ensure that they understand that no guest or potential client is ever less than a guest of honor. There will come a day when every person who walks through their doors is treated with the respect they deserve. Miles, previously choked with emotion, managed a slight smile through his tears. Do you really think you can change them, Dad? Mark's smile was calm and resolute. Not just change Miles, he replied kindly, but transform. Change them so deeply that their arrogance is replaced by respect. A respect born out of genuine hospitality and the shared value of every person's dignity. We'll show them that a person's worth is measured by their character, not their bank balance, and that even humble beginnings can be the roots of greatness. The boys listened intently as their father continued to share stories of his early struggles and his relentless pursuit of success through determination and compassion. He spoke of failures that had taught him lessons far deeper than profits and of moments when he had seen potential in individuals whom others had dismissed. Every word kindled their hope, reinforcing the idea that their small dreams and sincere passion for automobiles were worthy of celebration. By the time the conversation concluded, the initial sting of humiliation had been replaced by a fierce determination, and the comforting knowledge that their father was not only on their side, but was someone willing to fight for them on a grand scale. Though their hearts still carried the ache of rejection that day, they also felt the stirrings of a promise that would change the way the world saw people like them. That night, as darkness blanketed Westbridge and the stars began to wink in the quiet sky, Jason and Miles lay in their modest bedrooms. Their minds replayed Dad's words and the promise of retribution against injustice. They saw visions of transforming cruelty into compassion, and of turning painful exclusion into a beacon of hope. Their father's revelation had given them a new sense of purpose, a mission that extended beyond their personal dreams to a broader challenge, to reshape a world that too often judged by appearance rather than inner worth. In that silent darkness, filled with the quiet hum of future possibility, the boys made a solemn pact. They would learn, they would grow, and they would be the change they wished to see. Their hearts, once bruised by disdain, now beat with the rhythm of an unyielding spirit, ready to rise again. Trust in their father's promise. They knew that tomorrow would bring the first of many steps toward a future where humility and humanity were celebrated far more than mere appearances. The next morning dawned crisp and bright over Westbridge, its light revealing a scene that few who had witnessed the previous day's humiliation could have ever imagined. As the sleepy town stirred to life, excitement and apprehension mingled in the air around Bentley Royce. The once unyielding fortress of luxury was about to become the stage for an unforgettable reversal of fortunes. Before the first customers could stream into the showroom, a pair of vehicles emerged in the parking lot like something out of a high-definition dream. Two magnificent Rolls-Royce Boat Tails automobiles glistened under the gentle caress of the sunrise. Their imposing silhouettes and impeccably tailored details radiated sophistication and power, symbols not of brash ostentation but of the authority of a new order. The cars, escorted by a small but vigilant team of security personnel in sleek uniforms, rolled slowly up to the main entrance of the dealership, drawing the attention of every early bird employee and passerby alike. Inside the dealership, the atmosphere shifted in an instant. Staff who had arrived expecting an ordinary day in the realm of luxury were suddenly overwhelmed by whispers and murmurs that spread like wildfire. In the front lobby, behind polished glass and tasteful decor, an aura of disbelief replaced the familiar scent of expensive leather and polished chrome. Salespeople paused mid-conversation, and a collective silence fell as eyes turned repeatedly to the glass doors. Then, with almost cinematic precision, the doors swung open. Emerging from the grand entrance were two figures whose confident gait and determined expressions immediately caught every onlooker's attention. It was Jason and Miles, the very same boys who had been humiliated just a day before, standing with quiet, dignified composure in the midst of the elegant space they had once been shamed in. Their eyes, brimming with courage and the promise of rising above adversity, met those of the stunned onlookers. clad in simple yet neat attire that seemed to glow with an inner conviction. They moved past the receptionist's startled gasp with measured steps that spoke of transformation rather than revenge. But the most astonishing part of the spectacle was yet to come. Following closely behind the boys, with an air of quiet gravitas and an aura that seemed to command respect with every measured stride, stepped a man in an immaculate Tom Ford suit. It was Mark Brooks, revealed in all his unexpected grandeur as not merely the humble father they knew but the global titan of investments, media, and cutting-edge technology whose very name resonated in boardrooms and on the front pages of financial magazines. The revelation hit the assembled staff like a thunderclap. Conversations hushed, eyes widened in disbelief. No one could reconcile the image of the gentle, hard-working father from Westbridge with the dazzling, unassailable figure now standing before them. For a long, suspended moment, time seemed to slow as the showroom staff, many of whom had laughed derisively just yesterday, absorbed the magnitude of what was unfolding. Carter, the manager whose haughty sneer had dismissed Jason and Miles so brazenly before, now stood frozen near the reception desk, his face ashen and his confident swagger replaced by palpable anxiety. Around him, sales associates exchanged glances laden with regret and stunned silence, as if the very foundation of their world was crumbling in front of their eyes. Mark's calm and resonant voice soon broke the silence, addressing the stunned crowd both inside and outside the front doors. "Good morning," he began evenly, his tone neither loud nor boastful but carrying a weight that silenced even the persistent hum of whispered speculation. "Today, I have come not merely as a concerned father, but as someone who believes deeply in the dignity and worth of every human being. Yesterday, my sons were dismissed and humiliated in this very place, a place that should have celebrated curiosity and passion rather than scorn them because of their appearance." His words reverberated against the marble walls, each syllable a hammer striking against the preconceived notions of exclusivity. As he continued, Mark explained that the injustice wrought upon Jason and Miles was not a matter to be swept under luxurious rugs. Instead, it was an opportunity, a wake-up call for an establishment that had grown complacent in its elitism. "Today," he declared, "I am here to make a statement. I am not here to purchase a car. I am here to purchase this dealership, to transform its culture, and to ensure that from this day forward, every guest who crosses these doors is treated with the respect they deserve. Because here, in this world of beauty and innovation, every person is a guest of honor." A murmur of disbelief mixed with awe and, for some, quiet regret. Security personnel, who had first been deployed to monitor the unexpected arrival of the Rolls-Royce vehicles, now stood in respectful silence as Mark's vision began to set in. Outside, the gleaming Rolls-Royce Boat Tails seemed to serve as a tangible promise of change, a symbol that with determination and the power of integrity, even the most entrenched institutions could be rebuilt. Jason and Miles stood at their father's side, their expressions both relieved and proud. Their once shattered dreams of respectful inquiry were now reinforced by the knowledge that they were not defined by outdated standards. In the eyes of everyone present, employees, customers, and even local onlookers who had gathered and whispered in wonder, the scene was a transformative spectacle that seamlessly blended personal vindication with public reformation. As Mark Brooks' words faded into the stunned silence of the showroom, the reality was unmistakable. The quiet dignity of two determined young boys had catalyzed a revolution. The day's extraordinary events would soon ripple far beyond the polished floors of Bentley Royce, setting in motion a renaissance of values where respect and the celebration of genuine passion always triumph over shallow appearances. Inside the showroom of Bentley Royce, the atmosphere was electric, a tense mixture of disbelief and apprehension. The sleek luxury cars that once served as silent witnesses to opulence now seemed to bear the weight of an impending reckoning. As Mark Brooks stood at the center of the showroom, his calm yet resolute voice cut through the stunned silence. Around him, employees, customers, and even a few local onlookers clutched their expressions in shock as they tried to reconcile the familiar face with the titan who had just declared his intent. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mark began, his tone measured, "what you witnessed yesterday was not only a personal slight against my family, It is a stark reminder of the broken values that have seeped into the very culture of this establishment. His eyes swept across the room, pausing on the faces that still bore traces of arrogance and disbelief. For too long, this showroom has catered only to the elite, dismissing those who, by their outward appearance or modest means, are assumed unworthy. Today, that will change. At his side, Jason and Miles stood quietly, their youthful expressions now transformed into symbols of resolve and dignity. But the main focus was on the management team. Carter, the manager whose earlier smirk had belittled the boys, now found himself at the epicenter of Mark's rebuke. Alongside him, other executives and sales staff exchanged uneasy glances, as if aware that the facade of luxury was, in that moment, cracking under the weight of truth. Mark continued, his words resonant and crystal clear. I am Mark Brooks, a name that some of you may recognize from the headlines of major business ventures, global investments, and innovations in media and technology. I have built a career on the simple, yet profound belief that every person, regardless of their background, deserves respect. My sons, Jason and Miles, have been humiliated here, not because they lacked passion or intelligence, but because they dared to dream beyond the confines of social expectations. His voice softened for a heartbeat, the hurt of the past manifesting as a steely determination. I have decided that disrespect will no longer be tolerated within these walls. A hush fell over the room as Mark's unambiguous declaration sank in. At that moment, the dealership's polished veneer of exclusivity faced an unprecedented challenge. With deliberate composure, Mark motioned for the director of the dealership to step forward. The director, a usually unflappable man in an impeccably tailored suit, stepped timidly toward the front, the authority in his stride visibly shaken by the resolve of the man before him. Sir, the director began haltingly, we are deeply sorry for what occurred yesterday. We understand that our behavior was unacceptable, and we value every customer who walks through our doors. Please, allow us to make amends. Mark's eyes, however, did not soften at the apology. Your apologies may be sincere, he replied coolly, but words alone cannot mend the wound of exclusion. Actions must follow. He paused, letting the silence emphasize the weight of his next words. Therefore, effective immediately, I am acquiring this entire dealership. A murmur rippled through the gathered crowd, a mixture of astonishment and apprehension. My intention is not to punish for the sake of revenge, but to transform this institution, to rebuild it as a place where the measure of a guest's worth is found purely in their character, in their passion, and in the respect they are inherently due. Carter stood rooted to the spot, his face pale as he realized that the casual dismissal of two curious teenagers had led to an irreversible shift in his professional world. His smug confidence had evaporated, replaced by a dawning understanding of the magnitude of his error. What does that mean? He asked hesitantly, his voice cracking. Mark's answer was firm and visionary. It means that from this day forward, every person who enters these doors is valued, respected, and celebrated as a guest of honor. This dealership will no longer be a temple of elitism and snobbery. Rather, it will be a center, a hub, where knowledge, curiosity, and the sincere love of automobiles are encouraged regardless of one's background. He glanced at the assembled employees, his gaze both stern and compassionate. I am not here to humiliate anyone further, but to offer a chance for reform. Carter, you will remain with the company on probation. I expect you to learn from this mistake and work to embrace the vision of inclusion and respect that I hold dear. You will begin in a new capacity, where your performance and attitude will determine your future here. Consider this your opportunity for redemption. As Mark spoke, the sound of whispers crescendoed into a low hum, a shared realization among the staff that a new era had dawned. The luxury showroom was in the midst of a profound transformation, one that would extend its values from the polished floors to every interaction. The opulent displays of Bentley and Royce exteriors now served as a backdrop for a bold announcement that respect and decency were not commodities to be bought or sold, but privileges inherent to every human being. Meanwhile, outside in the showroom's grand foyer, Corporate photographers and local reporters began to gather. The spectacle was too momentous to ignore. A billionaire, the once unassuming father of two passionate teenagers, had taken a stand against discrimination in his own unique way. Cameras flashed as Mark's every word was captured, and headlines began to form that would soon recount the extraordinary turnaround at Bentley Royce. A story of personal honor, transformation, and the timeless message that true wealth is found in character. Carter, while initially shaken, now looked on with a mixture of regret and a faint, hopeful realization that this might be his chance to change. Mark conferred briefly with the director, outlining a vision for a new operational structure. A structure that would include diversity training sessions, new hiring policies that emphasized empathy, and an environment that celebrated questions and curiosity as much as it did sales figures. As the meeting dissipated into hushed conversations and well-meaning promises, Jason and Miles stood quietly by their father's side, absorbing every word. In their eyes, the humiliation of yesterday had been transmuted into vindication and hope. They realized that their simple questions and genuine passion had sparked a change that reached far beyond the boundaries of a single dealership. In that powerful moment of transformation, Mark Brooks' vision became clear. A declaration not only of personal retribution but of an entire cultural revolution within a bastion of luxury. As he concluded his address, he reminded everyone present, "Remember, in this world where appearances can often obscure the essence, true wealth is measured by the strength of one's character, not the contents of a wallet." The room, bathed in the glow of renewed hope and anticipation, slowly began to hum with the promise of a better future. Every once dismissed question could now be asked openly. Every interest, regardless of origin, was to be honored. This was the first step toward a future where boundaries forged by wealth and status would crumble in the face of genuine humanity. The dramatic declaration by Mark Brooks had sent shockwaves throughout the Bentley Royce headquarters. Now, with the weight of his promise still echoing in every corner of the showroom, Mark moved decisively into action. The very next morning, while the world outside Westbridge was just beginning to stir, Mark convened an extraordinary board meeting in the dealership's spacious conference room, a room that until now had been reserved for staid financial presentations and discussions of quarterly targets. Today, however, the air was charged with a sense of impending change, a transformation that would redefine the very principles of customer service and corporate culture. Mark addressed the gathered management team, his deep, steady voice resonating off the polished walls. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "the events of yesterday have made one thing abundantly clear. Arrogance and exclusivity have no place in a society that values human dignity and genuine passion. I have acquired this dealership not as an act of personal vengeance, but as a commitment to transform it from within. Here, every guest who walks through these doors will be treated as an honored visitor regardless of their background." A murmur rippled around the table. Even the most haughty faces, once so secure in their entitlement, now showed signs of apprehension and reflection. Mark continued, outlining his new vision in precise detail. "Rebranding the experience. Effective immediately, our showroom will be rebranded as a sanctuary where automotive passion meets genuine hospitality. New signage will be installed. A simple inscription that reads, 'Every guest is a guest of honor,' to serve as both a reminder and a promise. Our goal is to ensure that the experience from the moment a person enters to the time they depart is defined not by pretension, but by respect and care," he declared. Comprehensive staff training. "We will launch a company-wide initiative focused on empathy, diversity, and customer engagement. Training modules will be developed to address unconscious bias, and every employee, from the floor staff to senior management, will be required to participate in workshops that emphasize that a person's worth is defined by character and passion rather than appearance or preconception," he stressed, meeting the eyes of every individual in the room. Performance and redemption. Mark's tone softened as he turned his attention to Carter, the manager whose callous dismissal of his sons had ignited this transformation. "Carter, you have a chance here not to be discarded, but to be reborn. You will be reassigned to a role within the new framework of our operations, beginning in a humble position where you will demonstrate your commitment to the values we now uphold. Redemption is not simply a punishment. It is an opportunity to prove that you, too, can change. Carter's face, once proud and defiant, now bore a mixture of regret and tentative hope as he listened silently. Community outreach and integration. We will also initiate outreach programs that invite local enthusiasts, students, and hobbyists into our family of customers. By hosting free educational events, workshops, and community car shows, we aim to break down the very barriers that once divided us. The dealership must be more than a place of transactions. It must be a center of learning, sharing, and inspiring future generations who dare to dream, Mark proclaimed, his gaze drifting momentarily to the large windows that overlooked the dealership's parking lot. Outside the conference room, excitement and anxiety spread throughout the showroom and parking area. Employees who had once sneered became thoughtful. Some whispered among themselves about the possibilities of a fresh start and a new organizational identity. The opulent cars glistened under the soft morning sun, no longer just symbols of wealth but soon to be emblems of a reformed empire that believed in the inherent value of every inquiry and every potential customer. Mark had already taken tangible steps to implement his vision. By mid-morning, press releases had been dispatched to local newspapers and industry magazines. Photographs of the two Rolls-Royce Boat Tails, the very vehicles that had heralded his arrival, were displayed alongside candid images of him speaking with employees. Headlines began to form that read, "Billionaire transforms luxury showroom into a haven of respect, and every guest is a guest of honor. A new era at Bentley Royce." Social media platforms buzzed with the news, and the town of Westbridge quickly became the epicenter of a story that transcended an ordinary corporate takeover. Meanwhile, Mark personally met with the director of the dealership, a man whose initial pride had been shaken to the core. In a quiet, one-on-one conversation held in the director's office, Mark explained his rationale further. "I built my fortune on the steadfast belief that integrity and humility are the true measures of success," he confided. "My sons experienced firsthand how deep the prejudice runs. I could not stand by, and neither should you. I want you to be a part of this change, to help lead the way in turning an old model of elitism into a new model of inclusion and excellence." The director nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting both remorse for past actions and a burgeoning resolve to become part of something greater than the sum of its parts. As the meeting adjourned, he promised to begin immediate implementation of the new training programs and to ensure that all personnel were apprised of the new company ethos. The blueprint of change was already being drafted on whiteboards, in detailed memos, and through earnest discussions that spilled into every department of the dealership. In the midst of this sweeping transformation, Jason and Miles watched with a mixture of pride and wonder. The humiliation that had so deeply wounded them was now being transmuted into a powerful statement of human decency. Their father's actions confirmed what they had always believed in their hearts, that a great dream, when fused with resolute courage, can dismantle the barriers erected by arrogance. They understood now that their personal struggles were part of a greater narrative, a narrative in which every challenge, every slight, could catalyze meaningful change. Later that afternoon, as the revamped showroom bustled with new energy and conversations about the upcoming transformation, a carefully designed event was organized for the employees and regular patrons alike. The ambience was warm yet purposeful, with heartfelt speeches from Mark and even from a few staff members who had experienced personal growth during recent self-reflection sessions. Videos and slides showcased stories of perseverance from everyday individuals who had overcome societal judgments based on appearance or background. Mark's closing remarks at the event captured the emotion of the day perfectly. "In a world where it's all too easy to judge by the surface, remember that the deepest value lies within. Today, we take the first step in a journey to honor that truth, both for ourselves and for every guest who walks through our doors." The audience erupted in applause, a resounding affirmation of the new direction that had been set. As the day ended and the dealership prepared for another transformative day ahead, the legacy of Mark's bold action was already being written in the hearts and minds of everyone present. The dealership was no longer merely a building for luxury cars. It had become a living symbol of the power of compassion, inclusion, and respect. The once dismissive environment had been uprooted and replaced with a vision where every individual, regardless of their background, was welcomed and celebrated. Weeks passed, and the transformation that began at Billionaire permeated every corner of not only the dealership but the very hearts of those who worked there. The once ostentatious showroom now proudly bore a gleaming new sign above its entrance. Every guest is a guest of honor. This rebranding was not merely cosmetic. It was a manifestation of the deep cultural shift that Mark Brooks had set in motion. The luxurious hallways, which had once echoed with the sneers and dismissive laughter of a privileged few, now hummed with genuine smiles, warm greetings, and a quiet commitment to excellence, inclusiveness, and mutual respect. Carter, the manager who had once been the face of derision, found his role transformed dramatically. While his past behavior could never be wholly erased, he was given a chance to redeem himself. No longer was he allowed to hide behind arrogance. Instead, he was reassigned initially as the head of facility upkeep, a position that required him to be in constant contact with every guest and employee, as he ensured that the post-reform showroom was always kept immaculate. Every day, as he swept the elegant floors and polished the gleaming surfaces, Carter began to understand that every gesture of service carried an opportunity for genuine interaction. Through daily reflections and mandatory sensitivity workshops, he slowly began to shed the callousness that had defined him for so long. There was a certain humility in scrubbing floors and replenishing the fresh bouquet of pleasantries in the air, and though his journey to redemption was arduous, even he admitted that this role allowed him to see the world, and himself, in a new light. Elsewhere, the transformation was not confined to the corridors of the dealership alone. Jason and Miles, whose lives had been upended by an act of humiliating exclusion, found themselves at a crossroads that would forever alter their futures. Still carrying the weight of the previous day's rejection, they, with their father's steadfast encouragement, began to channel their passion for automobiles into a project that transcended mere fantasy. Late one evening, with the reformed dealership behind them as a shining beacon of change and new beginnings, the two friends set up a modest recording studio in the attic of their family home. A room previously filled only with car magazines and dreams, now buzzing with the energy of a new ambition. Their YouTube channel, born out of both pain and determination, was dedicated to demystifying the art and engineering of luxury automobiles for enthusiasts just like them. In every video, Jason's hand-drawn sketches and Miles's insightful breakdowns of engine technology interwove with personal anecdotes about overcoming social prejudice. They spoke candidly about the humiliation they had once experienced that fateful day at Billionaire, but also about the extraordinary transformation that followed when their father decided to stand up against elitism. Their videos resonated deeply with viewers from all backgrounds, people who believed that true passion was not confined to the glossy pages of expensive magazines or the spotlight of high society, but lived in every curious mind willing to learn and grow. The channel quickly grew beyond a mere hobby. It became a platform for dialogue about the importance of character over currency, the value of genuine inquiry, and the power of resilience in the face of societal snobbery. Encouraged by the overwhelming response from an audience that praised their authenticity and intellect, the boys began to host live QA sessions, invite guest speakers from various walks of life, and even collaborate with influential figures in the automotive and tech industries. Their father, Mark, frequently joined these sessions, his remarks delivering a powerful reminder of his own humble beginnings and the legacy of respect that he hoped to instill. In a world where appearances can often obscure the truth, he would say during one of the live streams, "Remember that true wealth lies not in the numbers in your bank account, but in the depth of your character and the kindness you show to others." Meanwhile, the story of Billionaire's transformation soon dominated local headlines and sparked nationwide conversations about corporate responsibility and the importance of welcoming diversity. Industry experts debated how a long-standing establishment had been forced to reinvent itself through the sheer force of a father's love and the unyielding determination of two young minds. In boardrooms and academic halls alike, the case study was cited as a pivotal moment in modern consumer culture, a real-life parable that reminded everyone that compassion and inclusivity could and should triumph over prejudice and entitlement. As months turned into a new era of openness and heartfelt service, the once cold veneer of luxury yielded to a warm, inviting environment. Every interaction at the dealership was now imbued with the spirit of gratitude and respect. Regular customers, many of whom had once passed judgment on the modest backgrounds of their peers, began to share stories of how they too had felt welcomed and celebrated. Employees, from senior executives to entry-level staff, participated in community events and local charity drives organized by the dealership, a living testament to the values that Mark Brooks had championed. In the final montage of this ongoing transformation, the camera pans slowly across a bustling showroom where laughter, conversation, and genuine connection reigned. Jason and Miles, now confident young men and vibrant hosts of their growing YouTube platform, concluded one of their recordings with a heartfelt message. Never let anyone's judgment define your worth, and always remember that true wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by the legacy you create with your character. In today's world, where appearances sometimes obscure reality, let's celebrate the strength that lies within each of us. Their concluding words rippled across the screen as images of happy faces, transformed spaces, and the gentle smile of a redeemed Carter intercut with scenes of community unity and progress. And so, in a final, resonant moment that brought together every thread of this extraordinary journey, Mark Brooks's vision was realized. A vision where humility, dignity, and love for one another reigned supreme. As the screen faded to black, the final words lingered. In a world where appearances can overshadow essence, remember, genuine wealth is not in your wallet, but in the strength of your character. Subscribe if you believe in the power of humanity, and don't miss the next story.